in great despair through the ashes of oblivion. Quick and unseen like the dragon's offspring, for we owe no debts and bow to no king. Every war has its cost and we paid, won by the bond of the body we made. War with the call that the battle starts now. As the demons listen, we strike them down, fighting back the rifts of light. Sent from the sky like some angel in need, giving news to
This service is provided in high definition by freeconferencecallhd.com. You are the only participant in the conference. The recording has started. All participants are muted, and they can unmute themselves.
All right, today's burgers are from HelloFresh. They're the griddled onion cheeseburger.
my presence chilling in your bones. Take your stance, I will give you one fair chance. So let's make this dance a bloody masquerade. Understand how the sun's in what I am. You're against the night itself, so be brave. That adrenaline rush when weapons fly. Fear that brings out that body high. So you know that I'm stuck here paralyzed with you. In the midnight clash of circumstance, the mercy of my inhuman hands, I will bring myself to see this challenge through. Stay amazed and twist of fate. You're face to face with death itself. Cause a battle where no heroes come. For life it well, or a cold night's chill. You'll be this hunter's golden prize. If you leave your goddamn paralyzed.
I had a dream the other night that, well, I didn't understand. A figure walked in through the mist with a flintlock in his hand. His clothes were torn and dirty as he stood there by my bed. He took off his three-cornered hat, and speaking low to me, he said, "We fought a revolution to secure our liberty. We wrote the Constitution as a shield from tyranny. For future generations, this legacy we gave. In this, the land of the free and home of the brave. The freedoms we secured for you, we'd hoped you'd always keep. But tyrants labored endlessly while your parents were asleep. Your freedom's gone, your courage lost. You're no more than a slave. In this, the land of the free and home of the brave. You buy permits to travel and permits to own a gun, permits to start a business or to build a place for one. On land that you believe you own, you pay a yearly rent, although you have no voice in saying how the money's spent. Your children must attend a school that doesn't educate, and your Christian values can't be taught according to the state. You read about the current news in a regulated press, and you pay a tax you do not owe to please the IRS. Your money is no longer made of silver nor of gold. You trade your wealth for paper so your life can be controlled. You pay for crimes that make our nation turn from God and shame. You've taken Satan's number. You've traded in your name. You've given government control to those who do you harm so they could burn down churches and seize the family farm and keep our country deep in debt, put men of God in jail, harass your fellow countrymen while corrupted courts prevail. Your public servants don't uphold the solemn oaths they've sworn, and your daughters visit doctors so their children won't be born. Your leaders send artillery and guns to foreign shores and send your sons to slaughter fighting other people's wars. Can you regain the freedoms for which we fought and died? Or don't you have the courage or the faith to stand with pride? And are there no more values for which you'll fight to save? Or do you wish your children to live in fear and be a slave? Oh, sons of the Republic, arise, take a stand, defend the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. Preserve our great republic and each God-given right. And pray to God to keep the torch of freedom burning bright. As I awoke, he'd vanished in the mist from whence he came. His words were true. We are not free, but we have ourselves to blame. For even now as tyrants trample each God-given right, we only watch and tremble, too afraid to stand and fight. If he stood by your bedside in a dream while you were asleep and wondered what remains of the freedoms he'd fought to keep, what would be your answer if he called out from the grave? Is this still the land of the free and home of the brave? God bless you, and God bless this republic.
And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first hour of the afternoon intelligence report. I'm Mark Kernke. One day closer to victory for all of our brothers and sisters, both on and behind the lines, in occupied territories southwest, east, northeast, and central. And ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to us on Libertytreeradio.4mg.com, AM and FM micro stations, CB base stations, and Ultranet, Hallmark, and Golden Spike Technologies east and west of the Mississippi, along with Alaska. Good afternoon to all of our friends out there in Lower 49, which includes the great state of Jefferson, along with CONUS, the original 48, the Lower 48, along with the two outlying states, the territories, and the clock. Somewhere it's midnight, somewhere it's midday. Right now here it's 5:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the bottom of southeastern Michigan. It is Communications Tuesday. This is the 18th of August. It is the 12th year of open Fabian Socialist and Soviet Socialist occupation of America with a K. 2020 Old Earth Calendar, 2020 Year of Conflict, Year of Betrayal. Dance of Swords has begun, and it's just a matter of where the gasoline hits the flame. When it does happen, be ready with the second bucket of gasoline. We're not slowing it down. We're going to kick it right into gear, and we're going to get this thing on the road. It's going to have to happen. We're not getting any younger. Anyways, Communications Tuesday. Real quick, as I've mentioned before, batteries, but I would remind everybody again, there are alternate sources of power out there, and you do need to invest in a few of them. They don't even have to be the most expensive, because you're not going to be powering, you're not the hydroelectric power supply company. You're not the coal burner. You're not the wind generator. Well, you could be, but you're not a massive power supply producer. You just need to produce enough trickle energy to get certain pieces of equipment running. when everything else is in motion with regard to the problems we are facing, okay? So with that being the case, a lot of what we're talking about is pretty straightforward. Low trickle energy can be solar panels, obviously. There's tons of those. I mean, the solution now, we're now into the, I think, 6th generation of the flexible solar panels. It might even be number 7 now because there's some announcements made. I was reading one of the tech journals last night. There's another batch of stuff coming out that's supposed to make it even more efficient. I think they're doing with solar panels what they did with microchips. They already had far in excess of the technology they were selling us, and if you'll notice, everything just doubled every time and blah, blah, blah. It's a great way for them to market the hell out of garbage that they could have had, we could have had in our hands right away, but they wanted to keep the spyware packages up to date and at least manageable with everybody on the same page, which is why they did what they did there. Now, the flexible solar panel technology, one of the cool things, you can carry it, but let's not forget there's a lot of places you can put it where it would be out of sight, out of mind. Roofs of cars, roofs of trucks. If you needed to keep power going and you wanted it whenever you needed it for the vehicle, for instance, just to trickle charge the battery, the main battery, you wouldn't have to keep it up connected all the time. Duct tape it to the roof. That's what duct tape, not duck, D-U-C-K, quack, quack, quack. It's not duck, it's duct tape. And it's also used to be called 1,000-mile-an-hour, 100-mile-an-hour tape, depending on where you were. 100 mile an hour is more accurate. 1,000 miles an hour, trust me, I don't think your duct tape's hanging on. But I've heard every term for duct tape you can imagine as far as velocities go. 100 mile an hour tape, those are most common in the old military. For anybody out there, whatever it is, the reason they built it is so that you could keep the plantums and duct work from making too much noise and bleeding and leaking too much air and whistling on you. It's one thing when you have a hole and it does this. It's another thing when you have 25 holes doing this by the time you're done. So duct tape had an application to kind of finish off, kind of like finish trim with woodwork. Finish trim covers up the sins of the last few, eighths of an inch you might have messed up on even. Or you intentionally left for, expansion and contraction space, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, fact of the matter is that the plastic units are really great that are out there because they aren't going to rot, they aren't going to break down. The only thing that I can see that I would probably do, and I know it's going to be obnoxious, is I would either take shrink wrap tubing, shrink tubing, or put it around the line as close to, and in fact, I'd butt it right up to it. I'd slit the tubing, overlap it, and then what I would do is bind it with a couple of small, really light-duty, very wide zip ties, and then I'd shrink it down that way just to give it some reinforcing. But I'd overlap it. I'd take an oversized piece and actually wrap it around right up to the butt of the equipment, and then I would goop it. You ever use tool goop? If you don't know what that is, check it out. You can dip like handles and make handles, rubbery, so you've got insulation. That's kind of over the top, but no, it's not, because all of the pieces of equipment you get, the weak point is the goes out to wire connectors. Now, if they're plugs, I'm going to tell you right now, the jacks will be weak. And, of course, the connectors themselves, if they're, using the whatever type of USB or whatever type of micro, plugs, I've got 20 of them sitting here in front of me of different sizes that are in use, by the way. What's cute about it is that you can have plenty of spares if you do that. You back up to back up to back up to back up. But you need that. You actually have to think that way. You need the spare power supply lines, wall warts, whatever that goes along with that thing. Double the number on everything because you're trying to plan for the long haul. Trying to go the distance, right? So everything should be doubled up with each of the kits, while you can do it now when it's on the chintz. Because, example right now, and I will be bringing this up a little bit later, probably in the next hour. We might get to it this hour, but there's a couple of supply companies that have had some really good buys out there right now, and with all the different sales, like there's a 12% off right now and free shipping. I got a package of stuff that came in basically for 1/5 the cost. I've also got points that you build up for ordering stuff, so I had like $8, $9 to take off the order, so I kept taking more and more and more off, and by the time I'm done, I paid pennies for the stuff that I picked up, but it's all things that we use all the time or that we need more of to have redundancy in all of the vehicles, at all the workstations, or with the tactical gear. One of the bags I got behind me is all small widget tactical gear. And that includes a little solar panel. I mean, a really tiny solar panel. I actually took a bunch of these mid-sized ones that were for the larger yard lights. I have a pile of them, and I disassembled them, and then I re-puttied them to another piece of equipment, another piece of paneling, a small piece of light, thin plastic, and then rewired it so that they're now in circuit, and I've got a little micro charging system. Now, it's not going to do what those bigger units are going to do, but it's going to be enough for the 1 or 2 batteries that I have that are in this kit that would be really needed. And I've told you before, if you're careful, you don't want to put them in a regular battery charger, none of these ion or NiCad battery chargers. Don't put any of your iron batteries in there, your traditional regular alkali batteries. But with a slow bleed homemade like this, where it's basically designed to work off sunlight, run some little tiny widget. They don't work real fast. They plan on the idea they're collecting sunlight all through the day, so they literally are a trickle charger. Most people would be impatient with this, but that's if you were using gobs and gobs and gobs of batteries, but that's not what I'm applying this little charger for. But there are chargers that will do better and are far more efficient. It's just, you've got all this stuff that you've been piling up. You better break it down and make use of it. It takes a little bit of glue, a little bit of wiring, a little bit of solder, and plugs, which you have tons of, and connectors, and you've got yourself a power source. So there's all kinds of solutions out there. In the little crank units, there's, again, we're probably, I think in the 10th generation of the latest cycle. These little generator packs, by the way, the little wind-up ones, go back to clockwork technology 100 years ago. Generators have been around for 100 years and more now. You do realize that would only be 1920. And electronic generators by then, there was all sizes and all kinds of experimental stuff, and it didn't have as great an output, much like I was just talking a minute ago here about the little solar panel. But you got to understand that they didn't believe in wasting or spending or expending gobs and gobs of electricity on anything. Certainly, it would depend on if it was cooking something or whatever, obviously creating heat. But for lighting, little efficient single light bulbs, much in the same process of thinking about lights like lamps, like lanterns, like a single candle, was more than enough to do all of the work that would need to be done with efficiency. You don't burn a whole lot of additional power, okay? You just burn what you need, and then you shut it off as quick as you're done using it. Use your natural night vision. Get yourself adapted to that, okay? In wind, I mentioned that. There are some solar and there are some little hydro units. In fact, I'm very impressed with some of the ideas people came up with, all these China sport motors and other devices and, different impellers and stuff that are laying around. They've made some really cool hydroelectric that are mobile. You can drop it in a river or whatever you got in the way of current, get the little spinner going, pushes a little bit of power, will actually either run something or charge something. Now, these should be a priority. Those 4 categories should be for one of your people, whoever's going to be in communications, for instance, although all of you should be in communications. You all need to know each other's job. But whoever your tech specialist is, you need to prioritize having one of each system at least online, ready to go in your battery of equipment. That way, no matter what conditions you're under, we get extreme overcast, we got bad weather. Hey, wind is awfully handy for that, right? Your solar's not necessarily going to do any good, but you'd be amazed how much your solar will pull even off a cloudy day, especially, again, with these new, more efficient panels that are out there. They'll collect better, and they work, okay? But if you take all of them and plug them in, you got something going on. Now, you're not going to find water or that necessarily water courses everywhere, so the hydro isn't necessarily going to work all the time. But the crank generator, well, hell, that's just a matter of how many calories do you have to work off from in order for you to grind it and wind it to get it going, okay? All of these should be a priority for you. You go out and shop and see what you can find. Now, there's one last thing I'm going to recommend, and nobody's really thought about this real heavy. that little impeller idea with the hydro was really cool, right? What if you were to take that same idea with a little hydro type impeller, preferably metal rather than plastic, and you take and make a steam cap, a vessel cap, for a pot? Because you may have fire, and then you may produce steam. And if you have a directed venturi/tube coming off of that, you could run the little venturi, through the venturi you run a little rotor unit, a little blade, because it's working off the steam, pushing through at a pretty good pressure, by the way, good velocity. You run your little generator pack off that, or run the generator head just the way you would with the hydro, except you apply the proper materials to survive the heat. Now, this could be a modular unit that would be just as readily available to, it would be kind of funny, it'd be classic Stone Age, moonshiner, but basically on the same line as the still, with a focal, you want almost a conical, but not quite, but a conical would really be great because you collect every bit of steam/energy you have available while it's still hot in calories. And it in turn would be focus directed and would be directed into a smaller channel increasing velocity, because it's going to follow the path of least resistance. And as it's thermally charged, the metal will actually work to pull a certain amount of the stock, the product that you're trying to create here. Now, we're not cooking vegetables, well, I guess you could. I don't know about that, though. But most important here is you want to almost work like a pressure cooker. Pretty much it would be. But in the process, it's directed towards a turbine. The turbine runs your little generator unit, and away you go. At much higher velocities and perhaps with more efficiency than, say, the hydro unit, which can be dropped into the water, although those are very cool and actually do very, very well by themselves. Okay? So I won't say, I'm not ridiculing any one of these systems. Each one offers some power. I'm not trying to be the Grand Coulee Dam. I just want to take care of sipping enough energy out there, pushing it so that my little energy sippers can actually get something done. I got a little unit here it's plugged in right now. Runs off rechargeable watch batteries. Doesn't take that much energy. I've never checked to see what it really costs, but for what they do, something like this could easily be charged by the kind of unit we're talking about, or the little solar panel units, especially the improvised ones. You're not out anything. Rather than losing the technology because you think you got to go in the Stone Age because I can't figure out how to wonka. Well, yes, you can. You don't have to go back to the monka-lunk-schmunk routine. We can still speak English, and we will not be using bear skins and bones and rawhide. Instead, we can actually, maybe just drop back into the steam age here and there. And by the way, hydroelectric and others, all kinds of cool ideas. Don't forget the chemistry age, too. The age of chemistry is really cool. Got a lot accomplished there, more so anybody wants to acknowledge or admit, and that was right in the middle of the industrial age. Heads up there, kids. Anyway, let's see. Other than that, one of the other things somebody's asking, well, you can search the system. You've got Chinasport Wish. You've got American-made out there. There are some companies that are independent, but a lot of the American companies actually have outside production. Just something to be heads up on. We got a caller. Who do we have?
Mike, could I make a suggestion on that one unit about dropping it into a stream? That type, if you were to develop it in a closed loop system, part of the energy that's generated will go to push water in a constant circular fashion to keep going through, to keep the generator running perpetually, while the rest of the energy is drained off for your lights, your freezer, so on and so forth. It has to be done in a place where it's warm, though. You can't do it outside because the water will freeze. Unless you had such a system where the whole thing ran not on water, but antifreeze.
Right. Well, there again, you're going to be restricted by, again, being relatively civilized. Although, again, it could be used outside the containment vessel, the pot, the cooking pot, or for that matter, pressure cooker, could be run off a regular fire, like whatever. But for, in-house use, there's a couple of advantages of having this because you do create secondary heat. You could make it a closed system and basically run it back to condensate. You would go to a condensate drip, and then it would actually pull back into the system, to the supply. Or you could just drop it into another vessel. Especially in the winter, it would be perfect for additional ambient heat. But either way, you're getting the electrical solution. So there's a number of different options. If you were applying it the way you're thinking, it's a closed system, then all you have to do is make sure that you have drop points. You can add a radiator at the other end, because once you get past, you could actually you could pull the rest of the heat that you have available, which then increases the overall area temperature. So it could serve more than one purpose in that way too. That's not a bad idea. It's just a matter of how sophisticated people are with working on the plumbing, okay? And the cheaper way to do this would be iron for anything past the turbine. Now, you could go copper, but it's going to be a lot more expensive, but it could be done. And in fact, copper and iron are both used for heating systems and boiler systems like this on a regular basis. Now, we're not talking extreme pressure. We don't need to build up, we're not trying to build a head of steam, but logically, if the impeller was made out of any of the more modern metals that are available to, for the steam generation, then, in fact, you might even be able to find some of the smaller impellers that are available in the system for that very purpose, where they're actually used in the industry. I have never looked for surplus there in that respect. And the neat thing is you could actually create a circ driver in the process. Well, certainly your impeller is going to do that to a degree, because when the steam passes through, to a degree, I don't know what the temperature drop would be, but it probably wouldn't lose its head completely, and it wouldn't start turning to condensate. But you still want condensate traps in, probably several locations along the circuit for that purpose.
What the system, what I'm trying to suggest is basically this. There is no steam involved. It's just like a normal hydroelectric dam in miniature form. And like I said, it goes in a closed loop system. It just keeps going around and around, keeps pushing water, push-pull. And, part of the energy is used to do that. And all the rest, which won't be a lot, all the rest will be to go, directly to your battery bank, then, your inverters, and there you go. And so that's what I was trying to say. But there's no steam. And anyways, a miniature steam.
Well, you're thinking about going hydro internally.
15,000.
Okay, you're talking about using, for instance, you do that, you could do that with PVC pipe. That whole system could be developed kind of like a Chinese water drop. It would work the same way. The advantage is that, again, with the modern age of plastic, you can make it whatever bore you want, but you want to bring it down. It's kind of like a fire truck pump, which has a progressive smaller. What brings up the head, what brings up the pressure, is a progressive smaller diameter pump, one after another, side by side. That's how they work. In fact, that's an interesting thing, because actually that would be a direction to go with something like this. And there's a lot of old fire equipment. They don't necessarily want the old units. You got to watch that, because we're talking many pounds of pressure. But the basic idea could still be applied, and it could all be done with PVC pipe. That would be the way to do it. If you're talking water and doing a sealed water system, the neat thing about that is you don't have to worry about pressure, temperatures. You have pressure to a limited degree, but you don't have temperature issues with regard to the components. What I'm saying is, if you steam, you have to go with technology that matches the temperature, the average ambient temperature and operating temperatures for the system. And to go there, you go into heating and cooling, into steam generation with like Scotch boiler technology. I guarantee there's enough stuff sitting around that would be, especially pullouts. That's one thing I haven't talked about enough. a lot of the technology like this we're talking about, with the PVC pipe, it's no big deal. Hell, you can even get everything you need off construction sites. If you got anybody who's doing any track housing, what little construction's going on. All the PVC cutoffs they do, if you grab all that, you can scavenge everything you need to do a system like this. Because there's a lot of waste, even no matter, for PVC is cheap at the industrial end to the point where that's why they'll hack off a 4 or 5 foot piece and chuck it. They won't think about puzzling it into some other part of the job. They'll just chuck it, and they'll just cut another piece and then take the smaller pieces they need off a 10 foot or whatever length of stock they've got. And if there's a small piece in, they chuck that. So there's a lot of stuff to be found off construction sites for this kind of project just to get half of your cost down.
I have one question. It's when my wood shop burnt down, I had 2 bundles, which is 10 pieces per bundle, half-inch H-gauge copper 10-foot, which is 20 pieces, and it went through what I call the heat treat when the barn or the garage burnt down. I just finally fished it out of the deep grass. What can I do with it? It's no use, I don't think, anymore for piping. It was all twisted like something from an art sculpture. The heat actually physically twisted it.
Well, if it had already been heated once, it wouldn't be a big deal to heat it and progressively bend it. The problem is, was it tempered? Did it temper it stiff?
No, it's very bendable.
Well,
very
then
bendable.
Go the other way. There would be a great way to make still coils.
This is a half-inch, not...
Yeah, we're actually talking right now about making some major stills right now. That would be a solution.
That would work perfectly.
Yeah, there's no reason not to. And the reason I say that is because alcohol right now, isopropyl alcohol is just not findable. And what you are getting, it's like I said before, if you pay attention, they've cut the isopropyl alcohol at Dollar Tree, wherever they're getting it from, by 50%. It's not pure alcohol. It's 50% cut. Whereas traditionally it was 90 or 90-10, or it was even 100% alcohol. That's gone for the time being, but there's also no inventory. Nobody's been able to restock. So that dictates and that demonstrates something we have talked about in survival and preparedness for the longest time about having a still for this very reason. Well, it's time. We're never going to get this back. The stuff that's going on right now, this is the beginning of the end of any kind of intelligent process in this country.
I think everybody should buy a collection of the Foxfire series. It almost seems that's the direction we could be going. But the knowledge that those people had in Appalachia is to be unbelieved.
And they can play the banjo, right? That's okay. My middle brother could play anything, and he played the banjo. Well, the thing is, the technology is all the information base is there. Everybody is still using it to a degree. The thing is, it's like the other day we were talking about. Well, I'll tell you one of the projects that Cap Monahan's doing right now. Cap Monahan is working on steam launches. These are steam powered. He's got 2 steam powered boats that are about 22 feet. But he also has one of the things that he did more than a few years ago now, and he has it's not really a prototype, it's just a copy of a standard model, but he has a steam-powered outboard motor. And the unit itself he built it on an aluminum frame, little boiler, everything's mounted so you and I could pick up the frame, pick the boiler and the whole unit up, everything, the hot box, all of it comes out in one module. You got a couple of lines that go back to drive the prop unit, and you could take an existing outboard motor of any kind and convert it. Of course, you'd lose the engine; it's completely gone. That's taken off. Or there are modules out there you can find that are actually from the past, still laying around, and they're not that outrageously priced, and you end up with an outboard motor steam engine. And he had put it on any kind of flat bottom or V-prow fishing boat you want to. He had it on a 15-footer. and was pushing it around the pond for demonstrations for kids, get everybody in. They would run the boiler. They'd actually help to, get the head of steam up and chug around. Well, we're making a quantity of those. The neat thing about
like
it is,
that, wouldn't it be better if because you're talking a boiler, you're talking a lot of weight of having it mounted midship,
it's
and not
mounted
on,
midship.
not on the transom.
No, it's not. It's mounted midship. The motor is mounted. The drive unit is mounted on the transom where it belongs.
Okay,
Imagine taking everything off above the base platform that the motor sits on, and chucking it. That's gone. And basically, what the unit, there are two lines that run along from the boiler, which is a midship, and those lines run. That's the incoming and outgoing. And those provide the steam that goes to the unit that puts it along, and it does a nice, on a flat surface, I think it could do a good 6-7 knots. I mean, it chugs along well. It's purely a matter of, how fast you want to go and how much energy you want to use.
It's not
the big thing is fuel.
Steam was never made.
I would love one of those.
Well, you know what? I believe, and you know what? You want to see this, guys, just to give you an idea. I think we have pictures of it, just now that you were talking long enough. If you go over to Libertytreeradio on YouTube, okay, and if you get over there, hold on, let's see if I can find it. I'm going to go over there real quick. Let's see. Go over to Libertytreeradio, and if you go through all of our old videos, the Captain Monahan Steam Show, there's a whole bunch of images. You'll see some of my son's armor in there, some of the stuff, the chainmail. We've talked about the chainmail. Guys, we build chainmail from scratch. And we build, in fact, Larry, Sergeant Ellsworth, who was the master of all trades, but especially micro trades, he did all the armor that you see there in titanium. He was working in titanium, and all of his chain link armor that you see there, all of the chain link drape, all of the the vest, all the other stuff, the overhead armor, the head armor, all of that is titanium.
That would be fantastic.
Not steel. And here's the thing about being Larry. Larry was a micro monster. He TIG welded every link. Every link on that is not just squeezed together. Those are all micro TIG welded, one link at a time, every stinking little piece you see there. But the neat thing is that it was made for an incredibly strong piece of Under Armour. And I would wear it, to be quite honest. I had worn it, but everybody had. He actually made a very good size.
I'd wear that in a second. I met a guy at a sci-fi con who had made stainless steel TIG welded chainmail, and he showed me a spot. You could tell where the 357 Magnum had hit the armor, but it did not go through.
What is
the stainless steel welded?
Yeah, what's funny is, again, where they originally started making the stuff, we're kind of off the track from where we're talking about the boat, but I'm trying to find the video while I'm talking, guys. There we go. I found it. Jim's Antique Engine Show. If you get a chance, guys, go over and check it out, and you'll see some of the equipment we're talking about. And this is from the Antique Engine Show that he'd have. Not everything that's there is steam. In fact, it's kind of funny, some of the stuff they did. I'm looking to see. Oh, yeah, good. There is a couple of the steam-driven motorheads are there, but also some micro-model gasoline engines. So some really neat stuff there. And the whole idea behind this is that, again, the steam technology had run, in its last leg, could do everything that any of the other drive systems could do. It was purely a matter of propaganda, pushing everybody in a particular direction. That's all it is. And by the way,
anybody ever made a steam motorcycle?
Yeah, he has had a couple of those at the show. I'm looking to see if now this is, there's video, and there's, of course, also a photo essay piece that was done. So if you look at them, go through, and if you see any of the Jim's Antique Engine, there's a couple of different ones, actually. There's two different, at least, and I'm looking to see why I can't find the other one right away. But, here we go. Yeah, 25th Annual Jim Monahan Antique Engine Show. 25th Annual Jim Monahan Antique Engine Show. And Edward is modeling some of the medieval armor, helms, and such that were done by Larry and that the boys all helped with. Actually, Ed and Ethan worked on the chainmail, and in fact, we had a little production operation going so we could crank out rings. The big thing is mass production, like anything else, guys. Come up with a system, make it as simple as possible so that it's as quick as possible, and you crank out product. That way you make more goodies when you have more parts. But it's the 25th Annual Jim Monahan Antique Engine Show. Go ahead and take a look at that. It's 8 minutes and 56 seconds long. And I'm not going to go through it right now because you guys can check it out. There's some other images in there. And before that, farther deeper into it is Jim's Antique Engine Show. That's 2 minutes and 34 seconds long. It's video, but it shows some of the equipment in operation. That's not very long, but it's got a lot of cool stuff in it you're going to want to look at. So those are the two. Jim's Antique Engine Show, and the other is 25th Annual Jim Monahan, Monaghan, Monahan Antique Engine Show, and I think the boat's in there. I know we have it on video, but I just don't know if we used it. And I can't recall. I mean, it's been a while since I've looked at the video. It's 8 minutes and 56 seconds long, and that's 25th Annual Jim Monahan Antique Engine Show. Check that out. All the stuff you see in there is not all of the classic stuff is homemade. But if you see a lot of that equipment there, it is homemade, home-built by people who specialize in steam. You've got the wood splitter there. That's always fun to watch, the woodcutter wood splitter. You don't have to have gasoline to get that done. They already proved that. And there's a whole lot more. So it's a lot of fun to check out. Also, I will remind everybody, since I'm on that subject, that you got to go, if you do the, all of the uploads, if you do a tag that says uploads and you snag it, you're going to get all of the live feed postings too. You got to go scroll down past that to get to the other regular videos. So everything's there. There's nothing I can see that's been dropped. But there are a lot of videos posted. So take the time and get in there. And if you are listening, if you're looking for our archives, go to Libertytreeradio on YouTube, and when you get a chance, get over there and give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe. All of that helps to motivate people to move towards where we are. We don't have any in-studio video, which is something I have been kind of working on for Ed down at this end. I got everything pretty well set up. And we might be able to coordinate the feed, but I just don't know if the lip sync is going to be the same because of different delays. So we'll see what happens there. But I've got all the basic studio squared away, and I've got the tripod. Tripod's ready to go. Cameras, I've got 3 or 4 options on. I'm trying to find the best quality that we have right now. We have a couple of really neat little digital cameras I picked up that would work well. And otherwise, everything's on the page. But Joe, check out the Captain Monahan's work, because he's been doing that for a long time. And right now, we're focusing on boats and we're focusing on energy. Go ahead, jump in there. Go ahead, caller. Uh-oh.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, go ahead.
Just real quick here, and I'm not going to stay on very long, but just there is a magazine out there. It's called Farm Show. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but Farm Show magazine has all these inventions that people have done. You can pick them up at Tractor Supply. They are on the web. You can look at their videos, some of the videos. And they have a encyclopedia, and some of the things are kind of interesting, and they're kind of cool, what people did to redo equipment, old equipment, or invent new things. Like there's a little tractor, little garden tractor, and it has a front loader on it. And they do sell those buckets, by the way, but these were homemade buckets, and some of them were actually lifted higher than the ones that you can buy that are commercial ones. So that's right. One thing. And then there were some other things too. And there was a bigger a wind generator, the windmill that had several different
that's thank you for bringing it up. on the wind generators. Okay, for instance, for the old farms. If you get a chance, we just placed. We stopped at the tower. The original tower is there, the 4-leg tower, and it had the main drive unit coming down into the original well house. And something that we would point out is a lot of those have the second and third line power wheels, for strap power, belt power. Now, it's not drive belts like you see, a V belt like you'd see nowadays. We're talking like a sharpening strap, only imagine a perpetual, rubber band.
A flat belt.
Yeah, a flat belt, but it's the width of a sharpening, like a sharpening leather. If you've ever been in a barber shop where the guy uses a straight razor still and he knows what he's doing, some do.
4 to 6 inches, right?
Yeah, and the neat thing about it is that if you, like on the ones that Phyllis just brought up, if you look, the shaft comes down, and then you have basically an alternating solution with regard to sometimes you have clutches where you literally just pull an arm, and it's like you have a clutch for a car, for a Model T or Model A. It might even be a Model T or Model A, to be quite honest. And what it does is mostly it's sitting on idle, but if you want to, you can engage that clutch. It puts a drive gear into connection with the main shaft that's running the wind wheel up above, and then it runs that belt. And that is one of the several ways that farmers electrified the United States. There were no power lines going out to the country. That well house was typically also the powerhouse, and
with a steam engine and a power takeoff, right?
They would have a lot of times they could have anything from saws to drill presses. I mean, that's why there are usually 2 or 3 different wheels also. And you might even have them even alternate sides of the shaft. I've seen some that are as small as 4 or 5 inches, which would be obviously higher speed, and then some that were 12 inches and 14 inches. I just looked at one. We had one I just noticed when we went and looked at it the other day in a house we were looking at. The main shaft was there, and it had 2 wheels. One was about a 6-incher, and the other one was about a 14-incher. And both of them were strap wheels. They were designed for running belt. And the interesting thing about it is that they all worked, which we'd be like, really cool to get that operational. Here's what most farmers did. They took that idea from that for the mechanical transmission of power with wind, and they took the 6-volt car alternators, or generators back then. They weren't alternators, they were generators. And the batteries even, and Edison batteries, because they were available. And that's how typically the farmhouses back in the day were wired up from the milk, well, not from the milk house, from the well house. And in addition to that, they ran tools. But if they ran the tools, they had to be within belt drive distance. So they weren't going to run them off electricity. They weren't going to run the tools. The tools back then, about the time this was done, would run off the same belt drives. Now, another thing you see, and you guys, you still see this on occasion, you'll see that see this in the videos I just mentioned that we have on Libertytreeradio from Captain Monahan's event. And when you see that woodcutter, pay attention to how it's hooked up and what it's hooked up to. Now, it used to be they would use car drive. Fords, they did the same thing with Fords. You'd jack up the rear end, stabilize it, put it on a platform, temporarily, of course, and you would take off your regular wheel, put on a belt drive wheel rim, and low idle or whatever speed you set it at, and it would run that machine. It could be a woodcutter, it could be a drill press, it could be whatever you needed drive for. In many cases, that might be outside the building, and in fact, they'd have an access door. You open it up to the side, only as tall as it needed, and only as wide as the belts, maybe a little wider. And you would park the truck. You'd have a stand set up for it. The belt would come out from inside the building. You'd put it around the wheel rim that you had set up, and whenever you needed to do shop work, that was your motor. You didn't have 25 or 30 different motors. You just had one motor, and everything else was, bushings and bearings and steel. And then gears, obviously. Go ahead.
They were all DC, direct current. They weren't.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
Which is supposed to be more efficient, actually.
Well, and again, when you think about it, look at how much they did with it. The country was completely wired up. Edison had a hard time selling power outside of the cities. In fact, when you look at those videos, and Phyllis, did you write those down? If not, guys, just
no, but I remember what they are, and I've actually done a little bit of research about some of this stuff. And there's still houses that still have that. I can't remember exactly what they call it. I never can, but they're just the wires, the two wires that go through, and they were direct current. They never did anything with them. The couple houses that we looked at that were like that were probably over 150 years old or real close to it. So
yeah, either they abandoned in place. A lot of it's knob and tube, which is perfectly safe whether it's AC or DC. It looks like bone ivory or porcelain going through the tube to the 2x4s, and the wires are actually bare. Originally, there was no insulation on the wires, but the knob and tube was set up in such a way there was no way they could connect with each other, and the wire was perfectly safe individually to handle. Now, the interesting thing is that Edison had to do the propaganda thing against DC to try and get the farmers off it. But the reason I bring this up is because deception or perception is an interesting thing. There's a bunch of little tractors that you will see in the videos that we have there from Monahan's event. Those little tractors are not steam engines. They look like steam engines. You know why they did that? Farmers were so much against gas-driven engines, even though Ford did everything he could to market them, and he's not the only one. Other companies did too, including all the regular tractor companies. They couldn't get the farmer away from steam because steam was so efficient. It had so much torque. It was far more powerful than gasoline. The only thing that came close to it was when diesel finally showed up, and diesel didn't show up in any good numbers for a long time. So the farmer knew they had a better tool that would not break down. Power was everywhere. The supply, the energy was everywhere because you could use cow manure, you could use wood, you could use corn cobs, anything you had that was excess, that was junk. Although manure is money on farms, but cow pies. If you had raising tons of cows, then you got all the cow pies you need, but you could burn anything in that wood burner, coal, wood, whatever, and the machine would work. So a lot of farmers to eliminate their shame with the other farmers, they bought those smaller gas-driven tractors that were built camouflaged to look like steam engines. It wasn't a gimmick because it was funny or cute, and that's nostalgic. They were running steam engines back then. And so the farmer who wanted to get a gas engine without breaking the monopoly, so I won't say monopoly, but breaking the trust of the rest of the guys, went out and bought one of these that looked like a steam engine. So in that period of time, people were actually a lot more thoughtful, up to speed, and they weren't stupid at all when it came to, mechanics, operations, and economy. Most important is economy. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Repeat, caller.
Yeah, this is Fluffy. It just occurred to me. I have a GMC pickup in need of an engine. Some brickwork too, but I think that would be a perfect platform to work with a steam engine in a pickup truck body. Don't you?
Well, it wouldn't be in the rear. My argument is it could be under the hood. But in fact, I would use the existing. Ideally, what you want to use is a manual clutch system rather than an automatic. But that can be changed real quick and be all virtually. That's a matter of finding the transmission that you need for it. Heaviest you could buy. But you might recall several years ago, we had a gentleman out of Missouri who had designed and built basically the equivalent to a V8 steam engine. Let's put it this way. It really wasn't a V8, but it was the size of a V8, basically about the size of a 350 Chevy. He worked it all out, mapped it out, made the prototype, did the first prototype in wood, did the second prototype from scratch. And then somebody convinced him he needed to go to MIT and have them map out everything for him. And they were going to have it done in 3 months. Well, he got it over there to MIT, and they got control of all of his prints and everything. They had all of his database. And I argued against it from the get-go. But he did it anyway, and 2 years later, they still hadn't gotten his prints to him, right? So he started pestering them. He's contacting them every other week, and eventually they send him a whole bucket of prints. And so he cuts all the machinery. He gets the shop to cut all of the components. They did all of the work, had everything finished to spec based upon the prints, and the damn thing wouldn't move in any direction. They had cobbled it up and I think the whole purpose behind it was to delay that project. I've argued this from the beginning. I have warned people about this. If you have a great idea and you think that you're going to get some solution from these rats and turds in any of these institutions, you are wrong. And this is like the nth time I've seen this where we'll get this blah, blah, blah involved because they're so much smarter than I am. Well, if you are so much smarter, they haven't come up with it, number one. And if they haven't come up with it, maybe it's because they were told not to anyway because they don't want that solution out there. Because one of the advantages of a steam-powered truck, and my argument was that would be the choice, like an SUV, full big body, biggest damn thing, biggest thing you could drive, guys, because the more room you have under that hood, the safer it's going to be to operate, easier it's going to be to maintain. But he had this as a self-contained module where the whole thing was no bigger than a V8 engine and would drop right into an engine compartment of a truck, or for that matter, a big car. But it wouldn't make any difference if the car was big because mileage would not be relevant. And you'd have more torque / more energy than you know what to do with. You could pull a 3-ton car down the road and the power plant wouldn't even know it was there.
Hey, Mark.
So the thing is, it's not that it couldn't be done, but now, for just a second, Phyllis, real quick, I'll qualify this. The other technology we have could still do the same thing. It's just that it would take longer to build up speed. But if it was a touring car for the highway, who would care? You know what I mean? In other words, you'll get what you want out of the vehicle. Go ahead, please.
There's two things. One, Jay Leno has one of these vehicles. It's run by gasoline. I think the gasoline actually burns in a chamber, and then it makes the steam, and it actually powers it.
I've seen that one, but that's the plumber's nightmare model. It's cool. It really is. That is cool. And by the way, that has racing performance. That's true. Basically, imagine all of that you saw there compressed into an area the size of a V8 engine.
Why couldn't you take a regular engine, even a 4-cylinder engine, something small to start with, take a 4-cylinder engine, just take the top of the block off, and then put, instead of...
replace the heads. Well, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Replace the heads, you take out the spark plugs and everything, and then you just have it running, just like you would with a propane engine.
Well, it would be what it is steam thrust. Actually, there was another gentleman that did that back in 1981, 82, and in reality he'd been working on it in the 70s, and he had all the bugs worked out of it, and the same thing happened. He just disappeared. Whether they spent money on it or he got somebody involved that he shouldn't have, which I've argued again. No, we need the big business. No, you don't. You need small business, small-minded to start with. Henry Ford didn't start out with a Ford plant. Henry Ford started out with a garage, and then he made a really long garage, and he made a basic model vehicle, and he sold his snot out of them. And then he got bigger. That's how it should be. That's how everybody should be thinking. But you've got the right idea. In fact, here's what's really neat about a piston-driven, a steam unit piston-driven using a thrust piston system. The advantage is that you don't have most all of the other mechanical issues other than, well, you still have lubrication, which is really something everybody forgets. Like I've told you a million times, it's not the gasoline the companies make profit on, it's oil, because you have to have lubrication in order to continue to function. The big thing is the range of oils that are needed for the steam component, which you have to have available. And they're not critical. They're critical, but they're not impossible to access. They're on the market. They are available. Other oils could be used in lubricants. It's just that, again, your efficiency goes down a little bit. Who cares? In reality, you know that you can use anything that's out there. The other big deal with this was, again, what I argued for a pan equalizer. What you've got is when you have exhaust, it looks scary because, it's like a train going down the road. And my argument is you make a stainless steel cooling bed, like a big muffler that goes under the vehicle, and the exhaust port goes into that, and by the time you're done, anything that comes out is moisture. In fact, you could even get to the point where if you wanted to, that would be like a condensate tray, and it would drop to that and be recirculated back into the boiler, which could be done.
Or exactly like a condenser unit.
Yes, that's what it would be. It would be a condenser, but it would be you have to make it. You remember, you're using an existing car platform that somebody else is based upon a particular technology and fuel, etc. You're going to be adding parts, and you don't want to shorten the wheel, the standoff distance between the lowest component of the vehicle on the base of the vehicle and the surface of the earth, so to speak. You want that height, whatever clearance you have, you want to maintain. So you want to make it thin, and I'd make it out of stainless simply because it would never rot out, it would never wear out.
Hey, Mark.
Go ahead, caller. Phyllis, go ahead.
You couldn't use the aluminum blocks because a lot of cars now have aluminum blocks.
No, and you wouldn't. Yeah, and the biggest
warp them, right?
Well, you probably could, but here's the thing: there's no reason not to use iron. If you have steam, you have torque, and when you have torque, when you have the kind of energy they've got off the drivetrain, the biggest issue has always been weight. Well, you can throw aluminum out the window anyway because you don't need it. I mean, we'd use it if you could. I'm sure you could develop it. The aluminum can handle the temperatures. It's already handling combustion temperatures that far exceed the steam temperatures that we're talking about. So aluminum would work, but there's a bunch of little iron block engines out there that are basically song and a dance price, and that would actually dictate which car you might want to use for prototyping. In other words, the engine, the power plant, you don't want to adapt it to something else. You find something you got really common, cheap, and you can do a quick conversion on. The GEAT system, okay, everybody goes, you mean they work? Yeah, I know those guys. I knew the dad, I knew all the boys. And they used to drive, with the GEAT system, they were getting 70, 80, and 110, 120 miles per gallon with gasoline, with a 3-ton, full-size, suburban, big butt Buicks. They were driving Buicks. They were driving big Chevys, 4-door, big family cars, okay, and Cadillacs. They converted all those. The bigger the engine, the easier it was to convert because you had more to work with, and so older, bigger, or bigger was better because older meant bigger, and weight was irrelevant. They got the same efficiency out of a smaller car as they would out of a bigger car, so why not ride in comfort? Think about that. Being able to drive around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not being squeezed in the car, but sitting back and relaxing in the back seat like you're in your living room. Now, I think that's a good idea.
That would be fabulous. Drive a big old Lincoln and get 50 miles a gallon or more.
Well, the Lincoln, he had a Lincoln town car, and they were doing about 84 miles to the gallon with the one they drove to Montana. I mean, well, forgive me, drove to... I heard another voice. Anyway, tell you what we got to do, though. Yeah, we're at the top. Oh, my goodness. We got to take a break here for a minute. We should be hearing music. Good subject. Again, guys, alternate technologies are out there. We went from solar panels on your backpack to water-powered electricity with drop, nothing but gravity. Remember, the more drop you got, more energy you have. More gravity sucks. And then from there through to steam. See, we don't need to go into the Stone Age when you have this vast amount of junk laying around that you can convert over, and people would be doing it, and it wouldn't be crude, and it wouldn't be let's just say, ugly. You could actually do a very fine job of actually making it disappear so it doesn't even, it appears to be what it originally was intended to be. And sleek lines. There's no reason not to lose them. Anyway, we're going to go to break. God bless our republic. Death of the New World Order. We shall prevail, ladies and gentlemen. The Empire's on the run. We're in the march. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. LTR, Liberty Tree Radio, live on YouTube and others.
Yes, we are the sons of liberty.
Liberty's Guardian, Guns and Ammunition, a family-owned business located in the heart of Ohio's hunting country. Let us help you find the right shotgun or rifle for you. Or if you're looking for a pistol or concealed carry, we have a nice selection of compact and subcompact pistols for that too. Check out our website at www.libertiesguardian.com. That website again is www.libertiesguardian.com. Go to the website and check out our selection today.
Join Mark and Don for Weapons Wednesday, where you'll learn how to use everything from your bare hands to your average AR-15.
The 12-gauge autoloader.
Sure.
The 45 long slide.
Yep.
With laser sighting.
You betcha.
The Uzi 9mm.
Yes, sir.
Phased plasma rifle in a 40-watt range.
What are you, crazy?
Wrong.
Okay, they'll talk about that too. So whatever question you have about whatever weapon you have, call Mark and Don on Weapons Wednesday. And remember, your mind is your first best weapon.
We all need to prepare ourselves. You might have the food, water, gold, and silver, but ask yourself, are you truly prepared? That's why you need to visit MaineMilitary.com. MaineMilitary.com carries everything you need. Gas masks, fire starter kits, high-capacity magazines, chemical suits, military surplus items, and much more. Do you own a firearm? MaineMilitary.com has a large selection of pistols and rifles suited for your needs. Are your local stores sold out of ammunition? Call or visit them today for prices on hard-to-find ammo and bulk ammo orders. You don't need to worry about having a military surplus store in your area because MaineMilitary.com is the only store you'll ever need, all from the comfort of your computer. Visit them online today at MaineMilitary.com. That's Maine, like the state, military.com.
I had a dream the other night that, well, I didn't understand. A figure walked in through the mist with a flintlock in his hand. His clothes were torn and dirty as he stood there by my bed. He took off his three-cornered hat, and speaking low to me, he said, "We fought a revolution to secure our liberty. We wrote the Constitution as a shield from tyranny. For future generations, this legacy we gave. In this, the land of the free and home of the brave. The freedoms we secured for you, we hoped you'd always keep. But tyrants labored endlessly while your parents were asleep. Your freedom's gone, your courage lost. You're no more than a slave. In this, the land of the free and home of the brave. You buy permits to travel and permits to own a gun. Permits to start a business or to build a place for one. On land that you believe you own, you pay a yearly rent, although you have no voice in saying how the money's spent. Your children must attend a school that doesn't educate, and your Christian values can't be taught according to the state. You read about the current news in a regulated press, and you pay a tax you do not owe to please the IRS. Your money is no longer made of silver nor of gold. You trade your wealth for paper, so your life can be controlled. You pay for crimes that make our nation turn from God and shame. You've taken Satan's number. You've traded in your name. You've given government control to those who do you harm, so they could burn down churches and seize the family farm, and keep our country deep in debt, put men of God in jail, harass your fellow countrymen while corrupted courts prevail. Your public servants don't uphold the solemn oaths they've sworn. And your daughters visit doctors, so their children won't be born. Your leaders send artillery and guns to foreign shores, and send your sons to slaughter fighting other people's wars. Can you regain the freedoms for which we fought and died? Or don't you have the courage or the faith to stand with pride? And are there no more values for which you will fight to save? Or do you wish your children to live in fear and be a slave? O sons of the Republic, arise, take a stand, defend the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. Preserve our great republic and each God-given right. And pray to God to keep the torch of freedom burning bright. As I awoke, he'd vanished in the mist from whence he came. His words were true. We are not free, but but we have ourselves to blame. For even now as tyrants trample each God-given right, we only watch and tremble, too afraid to stand and fight. If he stood by your bedside in a dream while you were asleep and wondered what remains of the freedoms he'd fought to keep, what would be your answer if he called out from the grave? Is this still the land of the free and home of the brave? God bless you, and God bless this republic.
And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the second hour of the afternoon intelligence report. I'm Mark Cornke. One day closer to victory for all of our brothers and sisters, both on and behind the lines in occupied territories, southwest, east, northeast, and west. Ladies and gentlemen, you were listening to us on Libertytreeradio.4mg.com, AM and FM micro stations, AM and FM conventional stations, CB base stations, and Liberty Tree Radio on YouTube Live, along with UltraNet, Hallmark, and Golden Spike Technologies east and west of the Mississippi, along with Alaska. Good afternoon and evening to all of our friends out there in lower 49, including the great state of Jefferson, along with CONUS, the outlying two states and territories, and all the other points on the compass, wherever you are on the planet. And that's why we also have to say good afternoon and evening. By the way, it is 6:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is Tuesday. It is the 18th of August. It is the 12th year of open Fabian Socialist and Soviet Socialist occupation of America with a K. 2020 Old Earth Calendar, 2020 year of conflict, year of betrayal. It's right in your face. And the Dance of Swords, Battle for the Republic. Book 1, as a matter of fact. Where will the betrayal take place? That's going to be interesting. The original book, the conversation or the images lead up to the final breaking of any logical process with regard to the creatures in government. And because of it, very, very quickly everything accelerates, and the rest is history, as they say. So for everybody out there, again, pay attention. There's a lot of work to do and not much time to get it done. We are headed towards the shoals. That'll be October when the bottom of the ship is torn out. And the shipwreck of November, no matter what, that will be the bugs on the windshield. That will be the splat. That will be the breaking. Everybody be ready for it. In the meantime, something sooner will happen by the very nature of the creatures. They're certainly going to do everything they can to not report all of the other wicked stuff going on. In the Carolinas, little boy, some black character came up, shot this little white kid in front of his sisters on his bike. No coverage. It took a week for him to get around to discussing it at all, and only because in the public media, the private media, so to speak, but the public social media, everybody was talking back and forth and knew about it, and it demonstrates the wickedness, the evil, and the nature of the creatures that are the excrement and filth that run the controlled media. In the same breath, yesterday I was talking about this case that came over the weekend. Actually, probably have seen it over the last few days. The gentleman who was beat down out in Portland. There is pre-footage. There's more footage. That with every, like I said, with every day, you've got somebody else who is running a camera. The guy had been helping another person who had been attacked. It was a white woman. I might even been, I don't know. She was already beat down. She'd been hit. She was up against the wall. She's stunned. They stole her backpack. They stole any of her personal items. The guy had stopped and was trying to, help her. There was a bunch of stuff going on between the Ubangosaurus from one end and the knuckle-dragging Maximus at the other, fighting amongst themselves, by the way. The orcs, as I told you before, the orcs always fight amongst themselves. The guy was beat up then, or hit and attacked, and there's such a frothing at the mouth, mental midget confusion going on with all of these Antifa types. They are definitely drugged. They're, at the very least, again, they're psychotic to the point where the characters, there's no common sense. You can't talk to them. It's totally irrelevant. They are frothing at the mouth, insane, and a bullet's all they deserve. Seriously. Every last stinking one of them. Everything I've seen, all the rest of the world, doesn't make any difference how evil or wicked they are, all the rest just go right along with it. So guess what? Just, like I said, what's the difference between Antifa and the cops? Nothing whatsoever. Oh, Mark, you're supposed to be on the bandwagon with the cops. Yeah, I know better. I know all the wickedness they've done. We documented that. This is like the other team that wants to do the same thing, but with their gang. And both of these creatures are nothing but feeding off our wallet and hate you in every way you can, and would kick in the door and kill you in your home. The cops would do this, and Antifa would do this. Same with Black Lives Matter and the kill all the white people militia crap. But as far as these blacks go, so, wake up and smell the coffee on this one. But what's fascinating about this is that the character who did this, the guy who ran up behind the guy, it's documented to the point where it's like me sitting right here watching what's going on in the living room with digital technology. The guy hasn't been picked up yet. Now, this guy ran up from behind, kicked the guy in the head. That is open, in-your-face assault against an individual who's already down for the count. He's already stunned. He really barely knows what he's doing, sitting on his arse in the middle of the street while they already ganged up and beat on him before. But when he kicked him, the audio with even the piss-poor cameras that were there, you can hear the guy's head crack when he hits, the pavement. So I didn't have to get close to know what you were going to have in the way of a casualty. You've got a fractured skull, whatever degree, who knows, with an individual who now is, how many minutes away from death, purely a matter of how quickly you can get him in for help to a real medical facility. But watching these turds every step of the way, it's like they break somebody and then, we didn't know that would happen. Yeah, they did. Yes, if I'd been there, they'd all been gone. It's that simple. And everybody better be taking the same attitude. You don't slow down. You don't stop your car. You do not, in any way, shape, or form divert from getting away from the epicenter of whatever catastrophe you're in. Try not to get there in the first place. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay? The first mistake was, try not. Well, I know what he was doing. Okay, the guy's trying to be a good Samaritan. Didn't have any weapons, but he was an evil white man, and the white man needs to be murdered by Antifa, which are whites who are, racially challenged idiots. They're a product of the public fool system. What you see there is what Donald Trump's education system, what Clinton's education system, what Obama's education system, let's go right down a whole bunch of them. The public fool system created those frothing at the mouth crazies on the streets right now. It's the product they wanted. If you don't think so, you better pull your head out of your hind end. I'm not kind about that at all, because this is deadly. This is all deadly. These fools, try to slice open somebody sideways. One of them actually hit the guy with a skateboard. Tried to do the woman the same way, and I think they cut her. But the sharpened skateboards they're carrying, and they know what they're doing, because they don't hit the people with the flat board. They're turning the board sideways, and they've already got that sharpened edge. Some of them put steel there, which, by the way, there's usually a steel plate for supporting it, but it's fiberglass. And they've sharpened that down and honed that a little bit with a grinder, and you smack somebody with that, puts all that energy into a focused place, breaks bones, slits skin, cuts muscle. Yeah, I know exactly what they're doing, okay? It's like I said, shoot their ass. That's why they just seem to be put down. You're not going to fix these creatures. They're never going to be. Look at their age. They're never going to be anything other than the frothing the mouth crazy towns that they are. So you're foolish if you think you're going to fix them too. The only fixing is going to be to get rid of them. And by the way, don't even dare to try and compare the Patriot movement or the militia to these frothing the mouth Fruit Loops and nutcases that make up the trash that we're talking about here.
Mark, these people are.
Go ahead, caller.
These people are from the 70s and the 80s.
the communists that walked around with the Che Guevara haircut and the gray communist clothing and handing out their flyers. And we laughed at them back then because everybody in society, the vast majority of them, knew these people were idiots, knew that they were insane.
Yeah, but we used to
you
lock
get
them up to a degree.
20, 30 years more of indoctrination, and this stuff all came in through the universities. It all came in through what they call the higher education.
I watched it. Remember, I've step by step, guys, for 30 years. I used to work at the U, and all that you're seeing here, this is the garbage we saw at University of Michigan, and we saw it at Michigan State, and we saw it at all of these colleges. And then it rolled up, and like I said before, they were contained because they wouldn't let the idiot sticks get past having any other job than one that was in the education end. But what's fascinating is then they ate their own tail and just rolled right over into all of the other aspects of the operation, and it's been completely permeated with these kinds of nutcases. That's the problem. And the worst part about it is, like I said, there's no fixing this. These characters have had this reinforced from, from the grade school, then to high school, then they get into college, and they sifted them to get what they wanted. And that's what we've got. Okay, they got exactly what they wanted out of this deal. There's no accident to this. That's the most common mistake. Oh, well, if we can only fix it. You are not going to fix it with this public fool system. It is your enemy.
If anybody wants to research where this came from, look up the Franklin School.
Yes.
These were a bunch of German Jews that came over back in the 20s and 30s. And they infiltrated all of the colleges and higher institutions and began to basically replicate themselves like replicators.
And it's actually reinforced over and over again. If you pay attention, guys, with movies. Oh yeah, listen, there's the Jew guy. He's so much smarter than you because he has this crazy accent to begin with, boy. And everybody chuckles because he makes little snide comments which really are quite venomous. But he's so funny because he does that. And he always is tongue-in-cheek. There's always some sub layer of something implied. And if you're paying attention, you can see what it is. But if you're glossing your brain over, you just let it ride and go, oh, he didn't really mean that. Yeah, he did. Just something to think about there, again. But as it is, the character that did the dirty deed, guys, he has not been arrested as of this afternoon. As far as I've got 2 different notices here right now, they know who the guy is. They've got clear video of what he did. There is no doubt he was frothing at the mouth, crazy animal every step of the way, constantly barking, okay? And they have just let him out. The prostituters, now if that was you or me, what do you think would happen? Let me just ask you something. If let's take that Eubangus Knuckle Dragus black character out of the picture, the one with the boy bun, and put Mark in there, and Mark did the same thing. Would Mark be out for 2 or 3 or 4 days walking the streets with a blatant physical assault like that, do you think? Hell, they'd make it a federal offense somehow. They'd lie about everything in the process and add more garbage you could imagine. Forgive me, I almost said another word. But because we've seen this before. But here we have a venomous, rabid, physical monster, and your government likes him. Your local government, and certainly the county government and the state and the Fed all like that guy right where he is, doing what he's doing. Because he kicked that white guy in the head and almost killed him. If he didn't kill him, I would point out, he may not have been dead yesterday, but an injury like that, he can be standing there or laying there in that bed, and the light switch hits, and he's gone. You do understand that. Head injuries, that is not minor in any way. I know people who have died 3 years later after an injury like that. So just a heads up. We got a caller. Go ahead. Jump in there, please.
Yeah, this is Rick out of Portland. I don't know how much they put out nationally, but the woman he was helping, not that I guess it really doesn't matter, was what I would call a lady with a little extra. and they took her hormone filled backpack.
Yeah.
So I mean, nobody has a right to beat the hell out of anybody. But I just want to kind of clarify that a little bit. Number two, the Portland prosecutors have said they're not going to prosecute protesters. Translation here is they don't prosecute rioters.
Well, and again, let's back up. Let's just take that as an incident by itself. That's felony. That's a high crime assault. I mean, that's there. We're not talking any kind of I'm carrying a sign and I'm chanting kumbaya or any BS like that. That character did a 5 or 6 step full broad run kick on the back of that guy's head.
Oh yeah.
If you and I had done that, they would be pumping daylight to our cell. They'd have to ship it down 3 corridors and angle it sideways. You would be buried for that. Anybody else on any day? Go ahead, please.
And this isn't anything new. We're acting like, they're saying 80 days of protesting. Portland, Seattle have been this way for a long time. If you look like you're homeless, then you can literally do anything. And I've said this a number of times on the station about guy walks up and double fists this lady's breasts right in front of community officers. Another one where Antifa couple were shoving around an 80-year-old man with a 4-footed cane. They didn't do crap. This is nothing new. That was a year and a half ago. Shoplifting, there's no such thing anymore. I'm still stuck here for a little while longer. I keep saying I'm out here.
No, we have the same problem in every one of the cities here, like Ypsilanti, Detroit, whatever. Walmart shut down the store in Ypsilanti on the west side of southwest side of town, and it was kind of a surprise, but it wasn't to me because I think they had more merchandise walking out the front door than they could pull off the trucks. Faster than they could pull off the trucks, it was going out the front door, but it wasn't being paid for. And they finally just decided they had to write that location off quietly. And that's true of a lot, because I know people who are working there, and they said, the theft out of the place, apparently the government, figures it's a way to keep them from going to other stores. But there ain't that many stores left out there. So Walmart took the hit for all the while the stuff was closed down.
Yeah.
And finally they just said, enough. So.
Well, there's a couple of reasons I called. I do have a question, but today at lunch I went over and picked up another I bought 25 more of the MRE entree deals. They're still available here, and it's almost like they're supplying people here for the battle.
What was the mix? What were they offering?
Well, it wasn't as good as it's been, but I picked up the jalapeno curry beef and I didn't get the vegetarian chili because I don't need any more soybeans in my life. But the ham and bean deal, and that was about it. I got a bunch of jambalaya before. I've got a good mix, and I have the feeling in reality this is kind of the last of. I don't know. I keep saying that, and they keep showing up here.
How much are they charging you a pouch for those?
$258.
Which is not bad. Actually, that's as good a price as anywhere you're going to get in the country. And those are regular retort pouches, right?
Yeah, and they're MRE Star or something brand. As a matter of fact, let me pull one out.
Well, the curry, it's interesting. The one, when I was out west, the Indian Army rations, I think I mentioned this before, the curried beef was one that showed up. But, of course, the beef, you got to remember, the cow, they can't, depending on which group you're dealing with, we do not eat the cow. The cow is sacred. But the curried, all like curried lentils and many of the other recipes, curried lentils with chickpeas was another one. They were classic standard MRE brown pouches. They were in the box, and they were 90 cents a unit at one of the stores just outside of San Francisco, actually over in Concord. And I asked the guys about it. They said, oh, yeah, this stuff is showing up around our area here all the time. He says, but these weird recipes, I said, no, they're not weird recipes. Those are American contract for the Indian Army. and or like the Pakistani army or whoever. But if you pay attention, you look at the language, it's on the box. And what's interesting though is they did it in both English and in Hindu, which I thought or whichever dialect was involved there. But they were, what was fascinating is that they actually were brown box, standard issue, properly packaged. Now they don't need to be. I mean, they come both ways. They come loose pack too when they're doing the what were they calling those? Those are quartermaster boxes. They were just one course, just main course, and then you have another quartermaster box that's just like your breads, and you have another quartermaster box, and then what you're supposed to do is bust it open and just hand it out rather than worrying about opening up those the main pouch. And they did those for quite some time. I don't know if they're still doing them, but we do run into them certainly as surplus where they come from the packing house. So whichever model you're getting, go ahead, please. You were checking. I gave you a moment.
Oh, no. I was just looking. I was wondering when the dates were on these. I mean, these are coming into a grocery store, so.
Yeah, that was the same thing. I went into a store. It was one of these. It was in a round mall, and this was where the building in the center was a grocery store, and it was round. And I went in front to the front. That's where I found it. Was in the little grocery store. It was in the front end of the store. But it was all Indian, like the curry. Everything had curry. If you like curry, you are doing fine. I have no problem with curry. I think it is very.
I kind of like curry every now and then.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes it up. And you think about it. You take those rations with all the other rations you've got. You don't have any food fatigue because you could eat 20 meals in a row and not eat the same food if you've got a good mix.
Well, and we do, and I had mentioned about the rice packets. They're 10-pound rice packets that are vacuum sealed, and they're not Mylar. When I went home and looked at them, but they're extra thick plastic. And
well, that works both ways. That depends on the contractor too, because they ask for either one. Go ahead.
Oh, anyway, so we were kind of setting up a box with MREs. You can stretch them a little bit by pouring them over rice, because most everything that we've got is kind of a pour over deal. Excellent. But I will have to tell you this real quick. The checker at when I was checking out the brick of rice, she kind of lifted it up and was kind of swinging it a little bit. I said, yeah, I thought about it as a weapon too. And she goes, that's exactly what I was thinking. She turns around, and apparently the other checker drives Uber or Lyft or whatever, and they can't carry weapons, but she says, whatever the lady's name was, you can put this on the front seat and protect yourself with it. She goes, this would be great. And I joked with her, told her, well, maybe I should give your husband a heads up about this. You could eat the weapon, but anyway.
When you're done.
Yeah, that's right. But no, we're still getting tons of supplies here, and I'm just kind of throwing that out. If you have to travel anywhere, it's worth checking out in other states or other areas. Like the MREs are not available at all the Wincos in this area. Like I said, I think it's an independent, good-sized grocery store. But yeah, we've been picking up canned meats, and the one thing I do want to order is, a lot of this food is kind of dead, and I'd like to get some. I have some sprouts, but just stuffed so you can get some fresh vegetable into you, instead of just MREs and things. But that's what I'm going to do over the weekend. The one thing I do have a question about was I was kind of in and out last week when you were talking about Lexan for blocking, say, the back of trucks or your vehicles. How thick do you need that Lexan to be?
Well, here's the thing. Like, we just picked up some of the stuff. Well, we got it for free. We've been getting stuff for free. I've been watching for any place where they were doing renovations on locations that handle money. And if you actually get hold of glass companies, you can get regular Lexan, especially where it'll happen is usually it's worn in the middle, but it'll have enough to, make a panel from the base, say, to the top, middle of the window or halfway up, a third of the way up, so you don't get the fog or scratch area in the middle. If you were to use any Lexan at all, let's see, 3/8, half-inch, 5/8 would be great, but it's not likely. It's out there, but it seems like they've been going thinner, although that obviously the Lexan performance hasn't changed. The big thing is I would face it if you're going to put it on the inside. It's really deceptive. Is try to face it right to the safety glass, because the safety glass is armor to a degree. It's amazing how much energy the safety glass actually takes, and if it's tapered, for instance, like on the front, it will actually deflect a few bullets before the tensile strength is destroyed by the shattering of the glass. But that Pauline reinforcing that's in the middle, that makes it safety glass, actually helps to make it pretty durable. And even in the back, with pistol rounds, if you had, maybe no more than 3/8, that would still significantly increase your protection. So,
I was thinking, I've run across it where it's really pretty scratched up, but I have to kind of fix the back of my seat anyway, and I was thinking about cutting it to where it fits in behind the upholstery on that seat, where it's just kind of a dead zone anyway.
Yeah, you can bolt it up. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Thank you for bringing it up on the air, because we've talked about that many times. You can make the Lexan will do better than your butt, obviously hanging in the breeze, but it's actually very resistant. But let's think about it this way: you could layer it. You take right now, you still can get the shock armor, the British armor for the old the Vietnam era armor. Okay, it'll all be basically fragmentation armor and low grade projectile. What we've been doing is making buckets up with material around the back of the seat, just like you're talking about, and we also come up on the sides, just like they do on a helicopter. And that gives you a little bit of, in fact, if you notice on helicopters how they do it like a dollop. If you go look at a chopper and see how they do their armored buckets on the seats, there's a reason for that. They do it with a little bit of a dollop because where's your knee? And they actually allow for your knee bend and everything else. Not going to protect you all the time. And certainly nothing is going to stop everything, or it can't be in the right place at the right time all the time. But it significantly improves your defensive posture and the probability of being hit. So the paneling, if you got the right idea, you actually could cut it and even bend it with heat so that it matches the contour of the seat and bolt it right to the frame.
Well, and the other thing I was kind of thinking about as well is you could put it under the seat as well if something went off, or we were even kind of looking underneath and bolt it from below where you can't see it, but just in case you run over something. And there again, it wouldn't matter if it's scratched or if it was bright pink, or, because sometimes you run into colored stuff.
Exactly. It's not going to make any difference. A lot of times what it is from people not using the right material to clean and polish, like the bank glass. You'll find where it's like the stuff that normally is cycled most often is the teller's window by the drive-through. That glass typically gets worn in the same spot. It's not that everybody touched it, but somebody does, and then somebody sees fingerprints, and then they don't use the proper bonding materials that were sold as a product to go with your Lexan, and it mars whatever they use to wipe the glass off is what mars the product. Mars the Lexan. And then if you get a little bit of grit or something, if you don't wipe it down first, and don't be aggressive, you have to dust it first. Then you're supposed to apply the buff, and then you're supposed to use a specific cloth, and it's whatever the combination of polymers are, and that way you don't scratch or break down the material. Well, that never happens, and that's why you see these scuff points right in the middle of a panel. It's usually like 5 foot wide and about 4 foot high, and really beautiful piece of Lexan, but right there in the center, it's foggy. And so they eventually take that whole unit out, and I had one I picked up. It was a whole bank window. It was a whole panel, for the side panels, the front panel, lower panel, and we got it all for free in the long run. So if you look around, there's stuff like that laying around where people have picked it up and they don't know what to do with it. They thought they were going to use it, and then they realized, well, wait a minute, the bank got rid of it because they wanted a window, and they don't have one because it doesn't look right. So, but for what we're talking about doing, like you're saying, you could even make like an entire panel if you got a larger panel like that and you didn't care. You could do what I was talking about before: is go in, measure the back wall of the pickup truck cap, right? and cut the panels so it goes all the way to the floor and goes all the way to the ceiling where it's flat. You don't want it to object with the curl. You know, the curl where the roof is up above. You want it so that wherever the last point, as much as you can, up to the last point where the roof may start to pivot, to bevel inward, and down below the same way with whatever contour. Although in many cases it's flat down below. They don't care. You can't see that. What you want to do is cut that so that it fills that space completely, height top to bottom, left to right. And then bolt that bolt it into place wherever you can find something that's not going to compromise the body on the outside. Just because, for whatever reason, I will say this. God, I don't know whatever metal they've been using for years, but man, the moment you drill a hole in a body of a vehicle, there's going to be rust there, okay? And if you do drill a hole, be religious about just gooping the snot out of that. First of all, take the rough edges off so it doesn't cut anything if you're running something through. And then give it about 2, 3, 4, 5 coats of whatever kind of paint, and then I'd still grease it with some kind of tarring material, or better still, that hole, wherever I drill a hole like that, use that bed coat, which, by the way, is ballistic also. You do know that. That's something we haven't even talked about. But that would be another thing, is doing the whole outer body. In that, one of my cousins did. It looks great. I wondered what kind of paint job he was, because it had a crinkle to it, crinkle pattern. And
I almost bought a Dodge Ram that it was discounted because they bedlined the whole truck.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'm fine with that.
Well, even if the truck rusted, where would the rust go?
Yeah.
You think about.
By the way, just to prove that, that ballistic deal, my boys used to love watching Mythbusters, and they did a whole thing on. They thought there's no way this is ballistic, and they did some explosions, and with the bed liner and without, and it was amazing how much of a difference it made.
It's laminate armor. Well, it's like I've been saying about all this. Okay, in fact, let's put it this way. Okay, it's just something to think about. Modern British tanks, for several models, have been using laminate armor that's not just steel. And they've been doing this with reckless abandon. Now, the reason they're doing this is because you don't just have solid shot that you have to deal with, but the idea was that with the ceramic armor, along with the steel armor, along with whatever other variants of material they're using, it is designed to stop a wider range of high-tech burner rounds that come through. HESH, HEP, take your pick, whatever it is. So in this case, it works the same way. The one material is far more resilient and reinforced by a rigid stock. It does a much better job of protecting you. This is why I've also argued about, hey, get some soft armor. I don't care what the soft armor is, but get some soft armor to wear as the slick side vest. There was a bunch of British stuff that came in. It was cheap. It's all gone. Maybe it will come in again, but if it does, you see it, grab it, but it won't be as cheap when we get it for $35 a vest. Then you take the plate carrier and put it on top of that. Well, there's nothing that isn't basically covered in your core. And if you do believe in the religion that somehow somebody's going to aim for the center of your body because conveniently that's where your armor is, it doesn't work that way. But even if they do, spalled, scraping, no matter how hard they say that, well, my armor will stop spalled. Yeah. In a field test, in a lab, or even outside, fine. In the real world, people are shucking, jiving, moving, dodging, and it's the same with your vehicle, by the way. So not everything's going to get stopped, but guess what? If you overlap with other technologies, it's amazing how much it will stop.
There was a gentleman that I knew, and I've never seen any proof on this, so this is more of a question than recommending it. He was getting some thinner stainless steel, but he was taking welding blankets and he'd fiberglass them. And he was talking about how between the door, the fiberglass welding blanket, and a piece of relatively thin stainless, that it was supposed to be a pretty good bullet stopper. I have no idea. I'm not sure about putting out of the fiberglass welding blanket, how well that, or what it does.
Not all of them. You need to do that. You're in the industry and you start asking around. A lot of them. Well, first of all, check to see what's for sale. and find out about the different manufacturers, because some of the welding blankets are Kevlar. Kevlar will do the same thing fiberglass will do, performance-wise. Bunker suits are basically fibra Kevlar. They're a blend, and that's why, again, they want everybody to wear their bunker suit, which obviously protects against flame and whatever. With all the different layers you have, in fact, it's not a bad thing anyway, because you were talking about anti-mine. One of the big things with mines is the flash burn, effect, which of course cooks the flesh. It takes longer for me to say it than it does it, obviously, nanomoments. And any of the protection like that, any of those blankets help to not necessarily stop, but deflect. And the other thing about this, it's kind of like the flame-resistant clothing. There was a ton of it. Remember, I've been talking about this for the last 3 years. Guys, if you see any of the stuff they made for the occupation to steal oil from Iraq, guys, that equipment works, and it is priceless, and some of the stuff has been dirt cheap. You've got the underlayer T-shirts and underpants that protects the core where the burn is greatest concern and usually is least likely to be burned. But if you have underpants and T-shirts, you just upgraded dramatically. Then you take with the outerwear that's available, and the pants and the shirts. Pants are harder to get than the shirts are, but the battle shirts are easy. If you pay attention, you can get coyote brown or even some of the tan, because they're cheaper still, because nobody wants a tan, for underclothing, and it's full burn. Well, not burn proof, but high burn resistant. And
Nomex stuff is very tough and very resistant, but it's like bullet resistant vests. It's fire resistant.
The advantage it's fire resistant, but doesn't stop other things. Whereas like the Kevlar is really handy because it will deal with both. Now everything will melt or burn because they had to be able to make Kevlar molds. So remember, enough heat and everything will, everything melts, everything burns. It's all man-made.
Well, we end up with 5x8 welding blankets, and they get burned on one end. So you still have a 4x4, or because usually it's just the one end, and then they'll replace them. So we get a regular supply of them. I just have never actually seen any actual evidence of it, and I didn't want to bother with it unless I had a better idea. The one thing that
we lost you. Dropped off. That's okay. It happens. Probably traveling.
Sorry, it kicked out. But if you fiberglass it, then you're adding an accelerant to it. So it kind of defeats the purpose in some ways.
Somebody just this got popped up. Somebody sent me this relevant. I was digging it up while you were talking. Armored Republic. It's www.ar500armor.com. www.ar500, that's 500armor.com. Everything is lowercase. AR500armor.com. They got a bunch of sales on their armor right now, supposedly. They have level 2 flat BOGO plates, or buy one, get one free, forgive me, $65. So you get 2 plates for $65.
Oh, wow.
You were talking about putting something on the back of the seat?
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's as cheap as you're going to. That's $35. Well, that's $30 and $32.50 a seat. But it also would be if you got something that needs inserts for personal protection. I'm just going to mention this. I probably shouldn't. Maybe they'll be gone by the time I do that. But they've got trauma pads. Yes, if you do, I wouldn't worry about the trauma pads. Add $35, but that's as cheap as it gets for a set of plates. They're level 3, but like I said, I don't really care. Armors, and right now, any armor is good armor. Everybody's now doing fashion statement comments like they were between Glock and Colt about body armor. Well, you don't have this. I've got that. I said, well, that's really nice. Congratulations. And I have this, and I also have this, and this, and I have yours. What's your point? I'll tell you what. The only thing, and I got to say this since we're on body armor, if anybody can find any of the Gumby armor from Vietnam, it stopped all rifle, 100%. Guys, I haven't seen one in decades. I had one sample. I'm still trying to find it because I had it put away up north, and it's there somewhere. Maybe it moved to another site because the containers, the barrels that it was in, and I saved it. But here's what I suspect. This is what we believed it is. Everybody knows what silly putty is, right? Caller, you know what silly putty is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this vest, now to give you guys an idea, the vest was approximately 12-inch, the vest will lay over you just like an over-the-neck hang and then wrap from the sides, just like you would with a modern undercover vest, but it was an external vest. It had a small gorget at the top that wasn't very big, a high throat, let's put it that way, a high throat in the front, and then tapered in the sides. In the middle, it had a cake pan. That's the way to think about this. Imagine taking a 12 by about 18 cake pan, which basically the cake pan was a ballistic material that started at the top. The thickest point at the top was about probably 3/8 of an inch, and it tapered down probably to an inch below, but it was flat on the inside, tapered on the outside. Okay? That was the dam. In the middle was a material that was viscous. It was not tacky, but it was silly putty. That's the only way to describe it. You know, you can handle silly putty. Let it go; it doesn't stick to you, right? Guys, I believe that silly putty was the material, but there was an inch and a half of that inside this trough. It would stop 762 by 39 dead cold. Now the undervest below the silly putty was conventional yellow plate Kevlar, yellow soft Kevlar, just like you saw in the Pasgat armor later on. This vest was developed around 1968-69. I have seen 3 examples of it. I know 2 of them that were brought back from Vietnam, but that's of the 3 that I've seen. I've never seen it in the museum. I think they've made it disappear, and they don't want anybody to think about them. You see no reference to this anywhere. Guys, it was silly putty. That's what I really believe. In fact, silly putty has kind of disappeared. I don't know. I was going to see if some jobber or company, because there's companies that make all these products. Typically, the one that I saw, the guy had been hit with a 7.62 by 39 right over the heart, and the bullet was stuck in the vest. And about 1/4 of the bullet was still exposed and had not been able to penetrate the goo. The other hit was go down to your belly button, go over to your right 6 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, right around there, and it was right on the edge. It wasn't out on, they didn't hit the body, but it hit his belly area, and it smacked in there, and the bullet penetrated no deeper than it did in the other. Now, this guy carried this back from Vietnam. He had it. And the bullets were, if you know anything about projectiles, you could recognize the projectile by, pattern of manufacture.
Yeah.
But the second one I saw had been hit once, and that same thing, the guys didn't pull the bullet out. They just left it right where it was, although I think you could actually pull the bullet and then just squeeze it all together, and it'd go right back just like silly putty does. But this is stopping ball ammunition in 1960, 68, 69, and stopping it dead cold. There wasn't any dimpling. The material was so efficient at retarding or stopping the projectile that it did not completely penetrate or move into the secondary armor. The secondary armor wasn't perforated. Couldn't be. By the very nature of
So it just transfers. So the bounciness of that silly putty just transfers it through the pan.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but whatever the material was that the pan was made out of, material, it was a plastine, but I believe it was another malleable Kevlar type material. It was in a kind of a placid green. It was not a dark OD green. It had kind of what would you say? The lighter green on your woodland camo. Not the dark OD, the lighter green. Think that color. That's what the outer shield was, the outer pan was. And the back of it had to be the same material because it contained this stuff. Now, if this stuff sat upright, it didn't slough off of that vest. It stayed right there. You didn't have to baby this stuff. However you dropped it, it laid there. And it didn't fall out of the vest out of the panel. It was on the it was in the plate. So you tell me what this stuff was. But it looked like, and in fact, malleable, the same malleability as if you were handling silly putty. I think it was just a big cake of silly putty. It was heavier, not much heavier than the regular Flak Fest of the day, the Type 56. And, again, if it did what it was doing better than most armor out there. So just a heads up, somebody came up with an idea. And another thing that I would point out, there used to be one or two references, in some of the just after the Vietnam War movies. There's one that I can think of, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but I recall seeing an example of it, and it had to do with something. It was a character using it after the war. But what's interesting is immediately we recognized it, and it was real. It was the same. It was the actual product. But they did not, and they do not want anybody to think about this, because I think about it, if it's something that's so easy to build that it doesn't require any super tech, and it stops ball rounds 100% in 30 caliber range, only going to be a problem with 5.56. If it can handle 7.62 by 39, it's going to stop 5.56 butt cold. But also, it's the felt energy against the target. The shooter did not go down and start wheezing, because he still had the soft armor underneath the plate, which means any energy that wasn't transferred through the silly putty, would also be then dissipated over a wide area across the thick Kevlar panel behind it. Soft Kevlar. This is why I believe in the laminate idea. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it does remind me of, in HVAC, we use butyl, which that wouldn't be my choice, but there's been a couple other products I've used. And as soon as you said that, it reminded me of something that was very stretchy. It came in rolls, but if you could make it one piece, and it had a grit to it, it had a sand grit to it, but it was bouncy, like our regular butyl. If you drop it on the floor, it just flattens out, which in some ways would work as far as absorbing energy. But I've got to remember what that was, because I'm kind of curious if there was some way that you could use this other stuff, do some experiments with it. Start out, just see what it does with the 22 ammo.
Have you watched any of the John Wick movies? Okay, what's comical about
I don't know how many times I've started to, but I never have.
Well, here's the thing. Watch them only because there's this thing that they've been pushing, and everybody goes, yeah, they'd really be cool. And it's like, wait a minute, okay. He's got this really thin armor that's basically the thickness of cloth, but it really hurts. And my point is, why? Why would you design it in such a way? Why would you, if the stuff is so thin that one layer will stop bullets, why would you not wear something that was 3, 4, or 5 thicknesses thick and really not heavier than, let's put it this way, vests are in style always. I mean, a vest is in like a showy vest, in whatever pattern of, cloth you want, and color-wise. And it's like, why would you not want to have that like in 2, 3, 4, or 5 layers, depending on how big you are? Because you get a much better effect with less, pain and injury. The old billiard ball routine, guys. Yes, it stopped the bullet, but those sharp, pointy objects at the end of the bullet there, the spire tip or whatever, has a tendency to create focal point, and, that focal point delivers all that energy and, expands out, and you got these big purple, black, and blue marks, one after another all over your hind end. Now, I understand he actually showed how he held the jacket up and let it take the bullet so it wasn't hitting him directly, per se. But the physics of that, there's a bit of a problem, too. So understand that you have to have something backing it to a degree. Certainly the stuff would collapse and the bullet would impact, instead, and then move towards it if you hold it 6, 7 inches away from the body. But if you understand the physics of armor, you're not going to get a chance to do that. So instead, we're trying to figure out ways so that we do not create what is cumulative, debilitating damage to the core, to the person. Armor should pretty well eradicate that if it's done right. And I'm sorry, these little plate carriers don't do it. They're the in vogue thing right now, but plate carriers aren't enough. Not especially since we're going into a war where it's going to be a war of attrition. I can't afford to lose people to secondary injuries that become blood clots, which go to the brain or go to an organ and kill you deader than a doornail. You see? So it looks really cool. Look at all these blood clots. I said, yeah, see all those bullet hits? Those are all blood clots / bruises. Only one of them. It only takes one of those to kill you. So, you might want to think ahead, just a little bit. Uncle Mark's trying to save your life,
Well, the other thing that you just remind me of is I used to have a friend that, and I haven't seen him in a long time. Anyway, he worked over in the Eastern Bloc countries, and for a number of years, and they were selling, they were overcoats, but they're ballistic overcoats. Basically, they would hand make it to you, and part of the theory was that most of the overcoat doesn't, hangs away from you. Obviously, in the chest, it's kind of tight, but the rest of it just hangs, and so you have a little bit of play. It's still going to hurt, but he was saying, I think he paid at the time like $400 or $500 for it, and I kept bugging him about getting me in touch with somebody to have, because I'd have it. I wanted one, and it never did happen. And quite frankly, I'm not even sure where he is anymore. But there were so many mob hits, and in Russia and a lot of these countries that were, when they were trying to sort stuff out after communism supposedly died, that people were wearing these just to protect themselves.
Well, not only that, just being around where everybody else is fighting over something, you catch a stray bullet, dudes.
Yeah.
It's like, look what's happening in Portland, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's that. You're getting the idea here. All right.
Okay, very good. Close with me. God bless the Republic.
Death to the New World Order.
We shall prevail, ladies and gentlemen. The Empire's on the run.
And we are on the march.
Hoorah. Thank you, sir. Guys, everybody out there.
Kill them all.
We will be back in 1 hour. Meanwhile, Ed taking over. More LTR coming up here live. It is Tuesday. God bless. Bye-bye.